Boker Tov, today's daf is daf Memches in Nidrim. Yesterday we learned the Mishnah. We'll start from the Gemara right after about 10, 12 lines on the page. Does the Gemara, my mitzvah, what are we talking about? We said that if a person made himself a chayrim, which is the same as a kohen, you forbade yourself hana on another person. Say Shimon said he's not going to give it out to Reuben. Reuben said he's not going to give it out to Shimon. So they are both forbidden to have hana from one another. And since they are partners in things in the city, like in the shul and the Aron Kodesh and the bathhouse and the public square and the Sifrei Kodesh, so we have a problem with that. They can't have enough from those things. Said things that are belong to the entire public, to the whole nation of Israel, like the Beit HaMikdash, Har HaBayis, things like that, that they can have enough from because they're not really partners in that. It just belongs to the public. But the other things that are in a city, those things are, everybody's a partner in them. So the Mishnah went on to say, "V'hakosef chelko l'nasi." Sounds like also you can't have enough from those things, and in addition, you can't have enough from things that you wrote over to the president of the Sanhedrin, to the chief justice, let's say. So Rabbi Yehuda says no. Whether you write it to the chief justice, or you write it to an individual, the difference is simply whether you have to have a kinyan or not. The Chum say it doesn't make any difference. L'zakos, you have to make a kinyan for them. But we only mentioned the nasi because that's usually what was done. People give it them because they were trustworthy. But the Gemara says, what do you mean? Why is that also? Why is it also if you give something to the nasi that belongs to him as Yana partners? The Gemara says, right away, my mitzvah, why is it also? Things that are also, I understand, things that you're a partner in, like the shul and the Aron Kodesh and the Beis HaMerchez. But why is some give to nasi? Amar Sheshes doesn't mean that. What can you do if Reuben and Shimon forbade hana from one another? And they both are partners, let's say, in the shul, right? They put up a shul together, a Beit HaKnesses or the Sifrei Torah, so they can't have enough from the shul because they can't have enough from, Reuben can't have enough from Shimon's share in the shul, Shimon can't have enough from Reuben's share. So what do? I'll tell you what, I write over my share to the president of the shul, to the president of the Sanhedrin, to the chief justice, let's say. Somebody said, so I don't have a share in it anymore. Shimon doesn't have a share. Reuben doesn't have a share. So each one can have enough from it because they're not having enough from, Reuben's not having enough from Shimon. Shimon's not having from Reuben because they've relinquished their shares to the chief justice, let's say. So that means Matik Anasan, Yechtavu Yechalkim Lenasi. Then it goes on, the Kanad Adel Babanir using some mutar, I guess it's really quoting the rest of the mission. Rabbi Yehuda Anshe Galil Tzrichim Zakos. The people in the Galil don't have to give over their shares to the chief justice, let's call that, to the Nasi. Shekvar Kosa was saying Al Yadim because their ancestors already did that for them. How so? Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Anshe Galil Kuntranan Hayu. They were argumentative. They were fighting people. People like to fight. They were just in general. They always had fights. But it was very common for them to forbade hana from one another. So their ancestors, let's say the ancestors in the same town, it's not like today where we all came from different places because the show we were all pushed around. People lived on, how many continents have you lived on? 3 at least, right? Right? People lived on 2 continents, 3 guys. They lived in the same city that their ancestors live in. Their ancestors already gave away their shares. So they didn't own it anyway, so they don't have to bother giving it over to the Nasi. Says the Mishnah, this Mishnah, the first few words of these Mishnah is really a repetition. Reuben can't have enough from Shimon, but let's say he forswore having enough from Shimon, and he doesn't know what to eat. So what can Shimon do? No, Shimon can give it to a third part person, and then he can get it. It's mutter for Reuben to take it from the third person. Now we already had that mission. We already had the mission back in Mem Gimel. We have this constantly, right? That if you can't give it to somebody, you can give it to a third person. We even had the idea you could leave it on a rock or a stone and be mafkir. We had that whole discussion. So you can give it to a third person. So the reason why this mission is brought down is to tell you this following story. That normally that's mutter, but some cases it's not mutter even in that case. This is the case we mentioned when we turned to Memches back. Last week we looked at this mission, the famous story with the father and the son, the wedding. There was a story in place in Beit Choron, which we have that's been rejuvenated today. Beit Choron, it's on off of 443, right? Beit Choron. There's Mavo Choron, there's Beit Choron. I'm talking about Beit Choron. So Beit Choron Shayu Aviv Mudaman Hana. his father was not allowed to have enough from him. He had forbidden, his father had said he's not going to have enough from the son. The son forbade his father to have enough from him. He couldn't be maternal for whatever reason. And the son was marrying off his son, grandson's wedding. He said, listen, I'll tell you what, I want my father to come to the wedding, but he's not allowed to have enough from me. So he told his friend, Yankel, Chotzer Asuda Nesunim L'chab Matana. The whole ulam, the whole courtyard, wherever we're having the food, all the food, it's all yours. So the father can come and join us. I'm giving it to you, so he's not going to have enough from me. But it was obviously just a ruse, right? It was just a ruse. And Amar, so the other guy, Yankel, said, Im shalif their mind. Are you really giving it to me? I'm makdish them. I gave you my things that you should be makdish it, or either lo nasatach, I didn't give it to you that you should be makdish it. I gave it to you so my father should be able to eat because it's not enough from me. You gave me yours. You only gave it to me for what purpose? That you and your father can eat and drink together and be comfortable and enjoy one another's company. And the sin for violating the netter will be on my head. You guys are having a good time, but I'm the one who's what's called today an enabler. I'm enabling your sin because he's really having enough from you. Amru Chacham. Some say,
Is that true? Is he really a sinner?
Yeah, well, he's enabling. He's enabling. Yeah.
Did he really do something wrong?
Yeah, he did something wrong because he's enabling, because he's part of it. It's worse even than we have a rule that
it's worse than the Nasi.
Then what?
Than the Nasi getting from the
Nasi is not doing anything wrong. Nasi is receiving a gift. That's a perfect gift. Here the difference is that the whole thing is totally a ruse. He doesn't even own it for a minute. We'll see in a second. When the story came before the Chachamim, any gift that the recipient cannot be makdish if he wants to, it's not really his, that's not a matana. Now these words aren't exactly true. What do we mean by that? Yeah, you were talking about, is he really a sinner? He's a sinner, more so in the sense that if I send you to commit a sin, to murder somebody, and you murder the person, we have a rule that that you're not my shliach. If I send you a shliach to do a mitzvah, kaddish and isha, to give a truma, to do some mitzvah for me, that's a nice thing. You're a shliach. But because you shouldn't have listened to me. Why you listen to me? You should listen to God. You shouldn't murder. So technically, I'm off the hook. I'm a bad boy. And in common law, you'd be, if Irving was here, he would tell us that in common law, it's worse, right? The head of the mafia is worse than the hitman. The hitman, just the hitman. He's Stamagoylam, that they said. He's just the guy from Bensonhurst who knew how to pull the trigger. But you really want to go after John Gotti or after the head of the mafia. He's the main guy, right? But in halacha, the hitman is the one who's more responsible, even though the other guy's responsible too. But over here, he's doing more. He's not simply. He wasn't like I told you to go kill me. You shouldn't have listened to me. He was enabling it by taking part in it. So now the Ron explains that, look, the truth is that a matana maslahachzer is a matana. On the classic cases on Sukkot, I have a lulav. It's first day of Sukkot. It's Yantiv, not Shabbos. We take the lulav, and you don't have a lulav, and I give it to you, but it's got to be yours. So what's the deal? You can use my lulav and esrog. I'm giving it to you. You're not borrowing it. Borrowing it is not good enough. The first day has to be yours. The other days, Shol is a borrowed one is okay, but that's why you shouldn't give it to a child on the first day, because he can take it, but he won't be. If you're marking it to him, he doesn't have the cost to give it back to you. So you give it to somebody else and give it back to you. That's a matana maslahachzer. It's a good matana. And even the Ram brings down that even if you marry a woman and you give her the ring on manas that she's going to give it back to you, technically it would be good, but for a different reason. We're afraid it looks like chalipin, and therefore we don't allow it. But technically we'd be good. In other words, a matana maslahachzer is okay. If I give this matana, I say, listen, I'm giving you the lulav to be yotzei. But you can't be makdish it. Don't give it to the basement. I want it tomorrow. I need it for the rest of the days of Sukkot, even though it's only drop one of the rest of the days. But I still want to do it. How's it look? You come to shul today. When I was a kid, maybe there was only a few lulavim in the shul. Kids didn't have lulavim in those days. Today, every kid who's 3 years old, if he doesn't have a lulav, he looks like something. He looks it looks amiss. He's upset, right? Today we have Baruch Hashem, we have everybody. But if I need it the next day, I want it back. So I'm allowed to give it to you. I'm asked to give it back to me, and I can tell you I don't bring back the shit. So this is what we say. It's not a general rule. True. In fact, the Ran learns that it's not kol matana she'ena she'eno hektish in matana, but kol matana she'ena. It's not really a gift at all. And Ran explains over here this is different. Why? Because in this case, he never wanted to give it to him at all. In the case where I give you a lulav, to use for a while, or can you borrow my lawnmower and I give it to you, it's yours. And then, you need it, you'll give it back to me later on. I use my phone, whatever it was, I'm giving it to you on the condition you're going to return it back to me. But for that period of time that it was yours, like in the case of lulav, it has to be yours. Over here, he never wanted to give him he didn't want to give Yankel the wedding feast. Why would Yankel want to? Yankel doesn't want to feed his father. He wants to feed his father. He wants to. He doesn't even want it for not really giving it to him at all. It's just a ruse. So in a case like that, in that case, that means that it's not really a gift. Notice the definition here is that he never really wanted to give it to him at all. That yes, you can give a gift on manas lahachsu. You can give a gift on manas that I don't want you to be makdish it, but it's really yours for a while. You needed it for a while. Here, the whole thing is a ruse, and therefore it's not a matana, and therefore we say that it's taka wrong. He can't, this kind of a gift is not good. Even though we said that if Shimon can't give it to Reuben, Shimon can give it to a third party, but he's giving it to a third party, right? Or he could put it down and be mafkarit for everybody to take. But over here, he didn't do that at all. He said to him, listen, I'm just giving it to you so my father can eat it. We're just playing a game over here, right? Playing a game. It's really mine, but I'm giving it to you, just in title only. Therefore, it's no good.
So on Sukkot, the Sukkot,
Yeah.
If it's matana after Hatzir,
Right.
but what if he did?
It wouldn't be. It's not
wouldn't be
hektish. No, because you can make it smell like that. It wouldn't be hektish. Correct. That's what the Ran says. Ran says, "Kloma nida matana after shema matana." On the left side in the Ran, before the lines get wide. Shema matana. I've got b'mikdisha eina mukdash. It's going to be yeshlocha and almanasach zero tikdisha eina kodesh. Give me the chasa, the kamar shiny chasa, right? I'm using it to you for your use, not for to be makdish it. I can make such a condition. Hanas mikomak l'shat matani. It was a gift. Matana zusha beis chorna feel shate ain't on the scavens go. So we'll play. He didn't want to give it. Just wanted to be called by his name, and that's it. And therefore the Ran says it's no good. Says the Gemara. Ma'isa lister. I said you start off the mission by saying that if Shimon can't give it out to Reuben, he can give it to a third person, right? Give it to a third person, and then the third person can give it to Reuben. That's okay. And then you tell the story of Beit Charon, telling that when the son who's making the wedding for the grandson, if he gives it to Yankel, he gives the whole wedding feast to Yankel, it's no good. No good. So you're giving a story that contradicts the basic premise that you could give it to a third person. More says chusar mechs is missing over here. In other words, not really a stira, says the Ran, but point is the story does not emphasize the first part of the Mishnah. This is something missing over here from the Mishnah. If the end makes the beginning obvious, in other words, you can prove from the end what his intention was, then it's us. In other words, if it's very obvious that he's not really giving it to him at all. In the case where Shimon can't give it to Reuben, he can give it to a third person. He says it's yours. You can do what you want with it. If you like to give it to the other guy, that would be a good idea. That's okay. But if it's so obvious, like this Ma'aseh Beis Charon, that's no good. Ma'aseh Beis Charon, that he never really wanted to give it to him at all. It wasn't like a matana mastahachzer or matana like a lulu where you have it for a short period of time. It's never his at all. Amar Rava, lo shana. So there's two vishitas in Rava over here. What did he say? Lo shana el de omerle. It's only if the son who's giving the feast away, to omerle, the eina lefenecha el kadesh yavava. I'm telling you right now. I'm only giving it to you so my father could eat it. I'm not really giving it to you. I'm only giving it to you so my father can partake in the wedding. But if he just said, listen, I'm giving it to you, I'm giving it to you, and this way my father will be able to come. And it's still, he's giving it to him as a court. He's saying it's still up to you. It's if you would like to have my father come, that's okay. That would be okay, because he didn't say specifically, I'm making the gift condition. I'm only giving it to you so that my father can eat, but I'm not really giving it to you. That's okay. If he said it like that, he didn't say, it's only if he said, I'm only giving it to you so my father can eat. But if he said, I'm giving it to you so that my father can eat, then it's okay. Then it's really Yankel. It's Yankel who's giving the food to the father and would be okay. The Amalei, simply telling him that, I'm giving it to you so hopefully my father will be able to come. I hope you'll allow my father to come. But the second lashon is, and this is the accepted lashon, This Lishna Chmin Amalei says that they said in the name of Rabba lo Amalei. Don't say that the reason why it doesn't work in the story based Haram because he said Vehina Lefenecha or it's Vehina Lefenecha or Ein Lefenecha. Doser Aval Amalei Hein Lefenech Shiaba. If it don't think that it's only if he said I'm only giving it to you so that my father can come and eat it. It can eat at the wedding. Even that that's not the only condition. Lo Taimatam Ramalei Vein Lefenecha Hudaser Aval Amalei. But he said, listen, I'm giving it to you. And that my father should be able to come. He didn't say I'm only giving it to you. Even he just said I'm giving it to you so that my father can come to you. Even if he says, listen, I'm giving it to you, and please allow my father to come. That's also awesome. My time is love. It's obvious from the Suda. Nobody makes a Suda for somebody else to give to somebody else, and he's making the Suda for his son. And it's obvious that he's giving the Suda for his son, and he wants his father to come. So therefore, in a case like that, he's only giving you. He didn't really give it. It's not like the case of the lulav at all. In the case of lulav, you need to borrow my lulav. You need to be also lulav. Here, Yankel doesn't even have to be at the wedding, right? He says he's not giving it to Yankel. He's only trying to make a ruse to get around that. And therefore, and that's the accept that the Ibn but then I gumru. I mean, because Ram brings out at the bottom that the Rashi says it's only if he does it. When he gives it to me, he has to say that. But the Rambam says otherwise. Rambam says even if he says later, that's also. He'll have a story, yeah. Pardon? All these cases you could say that. In all these cases, the guy says on the road, or all the cases where he said, what is he going to do for him? Remember, he goes to the shopkeeper. Shimon can't give it up to Ruvain, and he knows Ruvain's hungry, so he tells the shopkeeper, the Makol guy, listen, please send him some food, and don't worry, whoever. You could all those cases go do Atosni. Speaking in case where there's no rabbi to be Matanet. If he could be Matanet, for all these cases, if you can be Matanet, he can be Matanet, no problem. Then we get around the problem. Here, talking about where he couldn't be Matanet, or he didn't know he could be Matanet, or whatever it was. The situation was he wasn't in a position to be Matanet.
Yeah, what's bothering me, I understand what the distinction around is making, but it seems that the general principle that the Chachamim come to at the end,
Right, that contradicts what he said. Yeah,
it doesn't really.
So the Ron saying it's not quite like that. Exactly, it's not quite like that. Right, exactly. It's not quite like that. It's not quite like that. He said in this situation, since he couldn't be makish, that proves that he didn't really give it. But if he made a condition like that, yeah, it's not. That's why I think it's not. That's why I learned the Ron, because it's not a hard and fast rule. If you can't be makish, it's not a. That's not true. If I give you the lula, I'm going to ask that you're going to give it back to me. I need it right back. And you're makdish it, it's not hektish because you didn't fulfill the condition. Not only that, if you didn't fulfill the condition, give it back to me, it wasn't even yours. That's what I mean by matan also, you understand? Yeah. If you didn't give it back to me, it's not even yours. It wasn't even yours for that because you didn't fulfill the condition. But retroactively, it was never yours. Because if I tell you, listen, I give it back to me, you can have it now. I need it back by noon because I have other people coming to the house. If you don't give it back to me by noon, it was never yours, and you weren't Yotze. Who Gavran? I'm based now. Top on base.
I still don't understand. Yeah. In the case of two guys who own the shul,
right?
Okay, and they give it to the Rav. Okay, that's also a ruse. They know what they're doing.
Right. But it's his.
Can the Rav go ahead and sell the shul now?
Yes, he could because it was his now because they gave it to him. Then why do they use the Rav or the Nasi? Because they know he's an honest guy. He's not going to do that kind of shtick. He's not going to do that kind of shtick. He's going to do it. But he could. It was his. Yeah, exactly. Ahu Gavra. There he could. They gave it to him.
And son, why isn't the son the sinner?
He's also a sinner. Also a sinner. Oh, he's for sure. He's for sure the sinner. He's for sure the sinner. The guy just said, listen, you guys are going to have a good time. Then what do I have out of this except the sin? You at least get to enjoy the meal together and dance and eat the schnitzel and all that. What am I going to do? But what do I get out of this? I just have the sin. I'm an enabler. Ahu Gavra. Story number base now. Similar story. Ahu Gavra. A man had a son, top on base. Davishamet Kife the Kisna. The Ron learns that one shot in Rashi is that he used to steal. He stole bundles of flax. The Rashi brings out another thread. This time he showed him Shamet Atzmo. He evaded learning Torah, and he was osik with he was occupied with flax instead of learning Torah. Okay, but anyway, the father was not happy. The father was not happy with the son. I'm going to learn the way the Ron learns the whole Gemara. following around over here, that so the man had two sons, and the son number two, he was not happy with the son. Either he was a ganef, he was a highwayman, he stole stuff or whatever. He wasn't happy with him. So he said, you know what? Now notice he didn't say we don't find the lashon of asron nefsei could have been like a neder, but that's not really a neder way. Unfortunately, he just said what he said was, listen, I'm writing him out of my will. Like they say, writing him out of the will, because we learned before. Even if he didn't have a will, but he could say, I'm giving everything to this son versus that son. Remember, we learned that's part of the Yeshnachim, that a man could say, let's say a man has 10 sons. No, they're all going to get 10% of his assets, but he could say, I'm keeping this guy out. I want the other guys to take more. He could do that. Okay. So here he said, I want everything to go to son number one. Son number two is a crook. I'm not happy with him. Of course, I'm not going into the details here. This just guarantees that son number one and number two will never talk to one another again. But that's besides the point. This is what he said, right? Unfortunately, that's one of the problems in our parshias. What did Yaakov think when he favored one son over another son? This is all right, whatever. I don't know. We have to learn some stuff from here, right? So he said, listen, this son's not going to inherit me, right? Number two is not going to inherit me. Amalei said, maybe your grandson will be okay. Maybe number two will have a son who will be a good son. Don't you want him to get Yerusha eventually, right? Don't you want him to get stuff? Okay, you don't want number two to get anything, but maybe number two will have a good son. So he told him a different girsa where he says, listen, the girsa that the Bach is lo liknei haden. I don't want him to have a bar breaks or a bana and liknei, then he could cry for him. Another the way the Ran's girsa is that, I'll tell you what, liknei haden, son number one should take the whole Yerusha, right? But if son number two has a son, he doesn't have a son yet, right? He doesn't have a son yet, but when he has a boy, and if he turns out to be a Talmud Chacham, if he's a good boy, a learner, then he should get the other half. Then the grandson should get the other half. Meaning, number two, it should, so to speak, bypass number two. But if number two has a good son, then I want it to go to his son and let him take half. If number two doesn't have a good son, then everything should go to my son number one. But if number two, I don't want number two to get it, but if number two has a good son, then he should get the other half. That's what he said. Let him get it. That's how the Ran learns the case that there were two sons, not simply. So in this case, now, you see, it's not really like a neder, right? Not that you didn't make a neder per se, that you are forbidden from my nechasim. We learned before, even if he made a neder and he didn't say b'chayev of umoso, right? That when the father dies, the son does get the Yerusha, even though he doesn't want the son to get the Yerusha. The son Yashli just can't have enough from it. If he forbade his son from having enough from his estate, but he didn't take him out of the will. He didn't give it away before, right? He give him up by giving everything away. He didn't do that. The man dies, the son inherits it, but he can't have enough, so he has to play some games how he should be able to use it. There we learned that before. But over here, he didn't really make a neder. He just said, I'm giving it to number one, and if number two has a son who's a good boy, let the grandson, let him get half of it. But how does the Yerusha though skip the generation? How does that work? What he's saying is, I want number two. If he has a grandson who's good, then later on, then number two should get it, in, so to speak, in trust. Let's call that in trust for his son, right? That's what he's saying.
So number two never gets it.
Number two will never get it, right? Number two will get it. That's the question. You have a Bob rates or umbrella like that. What would you say over there? How does that work? Because the Yerusha doesn't work to a grandson. Big mistake. I saw that, people give the Yerushas to the grandsons, to the grandchildren instead of to the children. The Torah says the children get Yerusha. If the son isn't alive, then it goes to his children. But don't divide it up among the grandchildren. There's a lot of problems with that. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but you can give a gift whatever you want. But a lot of problems with that. What do you say? What's the Allah? Amar Puntus and Pumbedisa, they said, you can't acquire something only to give it to somebody else. Right? Here, what happened? He didn't want the son to get it. Right? He didn't want number two to get it. So he said, I'm not giving you anything. I'm only giving it to you on the condition that if you have a son who, when he's later on going to be bar mitzvah, going to be a learner, you can give it to him. That's acquire something. I'm going to ask to give it to somebody else. That doesn't work. But Nachman Kani, it does work. There's a machlokas. Is Kni Almanas like this word or not? But Nachman says it does work. We'll see the Rambam Sech and the Rambam says this. Why? What's the proof? The Sidra Kani Almanas Lahaknasu. How do you? Let's give you the example that we all familiar with. when you sell the rights to sell the chametz. You're not really selling the chametz. You don't have to give the speech every year about the selling. You're not really selling the chametz. You're selling the rights to sell your chametz, the whole business, right? The whole spiel. Let's leave aside the spiel. But how does it work? How do you make the king chalipah over there? The rabbi has a handkerchief. It could be a pen or anything. He gives a handkerchief. Right? And you take the handkerchief, and in return, you give him the rights to your chametz, right? And then you give it back to him, right? You're mocking him your chametz, let's call it, you're mocking your chametz, and he gives you the handkerchief, and that's what it's a chalipah, and it's an exchange. Now, in that case, what do you do with the handkerchief or the pen, whatever it was? Give it right back to him, right? It's understood you're going to give it right back to him. So he says here also, it's the same thing. When he gives me the handkerchief, he's saying, take the handkerchief on the condition, of course, you're going to give it back to me. So that works. So that works, same thing. Give you something, Almanasa, you're going to give it back to me. So here too, I can give the son, number 2, assets on the condition that he's going to give it to somebody else. That's what Rav Nachman says it works. So we have machlokas here. Does that kind of work? Can you work or not? Rav Ashi disagreed with Rav Nachman. He says, who says in the case of the handkerchief that if he took it, he can't keep it, right? If the rabbi gives me the pen, right? How do they usually do it? The rabbi has a pen or a handkerchief or something, and he gives it to you. He says, pick up your handkerchief, and you take it. Then you automatically you give him the house or the place where the chametz is, with all that, right? But let's say you decide to keep the pen or the handkerchief, you can keep it. He says, so therefore, it's not necessarily kaniyam matnasu. I'll tell you something else. Even if you say that when he gives you the handkerchief, you're going to give it back to him, right? You're giving him your chametz. He's giving you the handkerchief. And it's understood you're going to give him back the handkerchief. But even if you say it works, Devakani, minhashta, right? It works from right then. As soon as when does the chalos, when does the transaction take place? At that point, when you go over to the rabbi, he gives you the handkerchief, you give him your chametz, it happens right then. That works. But over here in the case of the son, the grandson, who he might have a grandson who's going to be a Talmud Chacham, right? But he's not here yet. He's not even born yet. It's going to work later on. How's that going to work? How's that going to work? It's only going to work when his grandson's going to be a rabbi, going to be a rabbinical student, right? At that point in time, the Kenyan has elapsed a long time before, right? How is he mocked it to him? He's mocked it to him, to his son, Almanas, that he's going to acquire for the grandson, but the handkerchief is long gone by then, and it doesn't work that way. And the Ran points out that even Rav Nachman holds that if you acquire something, let's say you make a Kenyan Almanas, you're going to acquire it after 30 days. And after 30 days, it's not in your possession, it doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. It only works if you did it me'achshav. So if you did it this way, maybe it's like me'achshav. So he says, oh, you know what? If I have a grandson, number 2 as a son who's going to learn, so you're acquiring it today, retroactively from today when I'm giving it. Remember, we always said that when you give something away, the truth is by Yerusha, you can give something to other sons. Like I told you before, if he had 10 sons, and let's say he doesn't want to give to 1 or 2 sons, he can be Torah Yerusha. We learned that you can give it away to the other sons, even Torah Yerusha after he dies. But over here, he's not giving it to Torah Yerusha because you can't give it to your grandson of Yerusha. If there's a son, it goes to the children. The children, even if they're dead, it goes to their children. But that's the way it works. It really goes to Yerusha. Yerusha has to go according to the rules of the Torah. First the sons, then the daughters, then if there are no children, then it goes back to his father, right, to the father. If the father's dead, it goes to the father's sons. There's a whole order for Yerusha, right? But over here, there's not. Here he's giving it to half to son number 1, and the other half to son number 2's son. That only works for the Kenyan, and it's a Kenyan almanas lahaknos. Rav Pumbedi says it's no good. Rav Nachman says it is good, and Rav Ashi here takes issue with Rav Nachman. He says because of a Kenyan sutter is not necessarily almanas lahachser. That's almanas lahaknos to somebody else, because who says you can't keep the handkerchief? And even if it does work, it works immediately, not later on. How is this different now? Here, raised this question before. You're also giving it away, right? Let's run the story with the wedding at the son and the wedding and the father. We said that doesn't work. That's also kani al maknasu v'lo kani. Rav Nachman says that if I'm giving it to you, I'm asked to give to somebody else or to give it back to me, that works. It doesn't work over there, right? There it doesn't work. I'm giving it to you, I'm asked that you're going to give it back to me later on, or right, or that you're going to give it to my father, to somebody else, and that doesn't work. So so there's two different ways. And sometimes he gave him an answer. That's clear that he's not really giving it to Yankel, right? Because he really just wants his father to eat there. He's not really giving it to him. It's not like the case of the lulav where he's using it for a while. The Zinman Amalei, and sometimes he gave an answer that goes to Kabbalazar Domer Afilu Bitur Asr B'Marano. That even a little bit, and even though, for example, if I walk on your property, that's not considered gzela, right? Not allowed. I walk on your property. What did I steal? It's not a big deal. I'm not to steal from you. But if I walk over your property, people are usually not makbid about that. They give up their mavater. They give up on things like that. Still, if I can't have enough from you, if I forswear having enough from you, I'm not allowed to. Even bitter asur, it's different because when it comes to the netter, it's different. So Blazer says the Amar Afila bitter asur. So it doesn't really mean that that's not a case of bitter. The case of the wedding is not where he's not giving up on something small, but he's just saying he was more machmer over there. It goes like a Blazer who's more machmer, who says, the Ran says at the bottom of the page, 5 lines from the bottom of the page, V'zim normally Rablazer Rosi Afilu bitter asur lo the shayach hocha din bitter elo ledimim b'amalek to just get comparable. The chiyech the machmer of Blazer ben Adorim tzvei mi b'dinim mominus more than regular money matters. The b'dinim mominus b'yisrael shari comes to money. If I walked on your land, that's mutter. Let's maybe shouldn't guess. I didn't steal anything. I walked in your land. Oh, you mean maybe I ruined the plant a little bit? I hurt the dirt a little bit, like that. People are not mocked about it. Even if it works like it didn't, if I give you something, that you're going to give it to somebody else or give it back to me, that works. When it comes to making a netter, the case of the son and the father, there is more machmer. So you could say that the case, according to the second answer, he's saying really that it goes like a belezer, meaning yes, it could work. This is not much different than that works. In the case of the sons, number 1 and the 2, and the grandson learning and all that, it's not much different than the case of Beis Charon. But that goes like a belezer was more makbid. That it comes from a netter, we're more makbid, and that Mishnah goes like a belezer. The first answer is that case is simply different because he never really gave it to him, because it's obvious that he never really gave it to him at all. Whereas over here, he gave it to him al-manas to give to somebody else, giving it to you, to the son number 2, al-manas to give it to the grandson, and it works me'achshav, then it could work. And then it could work. So the afil beit rasmana. Tanan. Amru chacham, the Mishnah said in the Mishnah, Amru chacham atan shem mikdisha atem mikdeshes eina matana kol lasuyei mai. It says any gift, right, which is not a gift in the sense that the person who received it cannot be makdish it. It's not considered a gift at all. Kol lasuyei mai, lav lasuyei hamilsa. Isn't it to include the story? Hamilsa, the shadya bekipe. So different girsas over here. If some of the girsa, the man is the girsa, kol milsa, my love, let's say hamilsa the kipe, the story with the son number 2 who was a crook, and the father didn't want to give it to him, right? And he says he didn't really give it to him because what did he do? He said, I'll give, okay, and the chance that you have a grandson, that the grandson was going to learn, I'm giving half to number 1. He's the good boy, and the other half, if number 2 has a son, so I'll give it to number 2. I'll manas that he's going to give it to his son. I'm not going to give it to the brother. Doesn't happen to Yerusha. Giving to him as a gift, and manas he's going to give it to the other person. Well, can number 2 be makdish it right now? No, he can't. So doesn't it come to include that case too? And those cases are similar, right? We just said before, well, that's different over there because he never really meant to give it to him. Here also, he didn't need to give it to number 2. He meant to give it only to number 2's son. So isn't it coming to include that case too? Some say that the gears are slightly different, that the shadya b'kfela, the Rashi says the shadya b'kfela means this. The couple he said, likni adain. Number 1 should be corner, bihavi barbre baran. And if number 2 has a grandson that's going, he has a son, my grandson who's a learner, liknai lebre. The vade lokana doesn't work. This the guy my love. Let's see how milsa the sham bekeeping milsa the best chon the damila also mice and keeping. Notice in both cases he's giving it. In the case with the wedding, he's giving it to Yanko, right? Not really giving it to him. Over here, he's also not really giving it to number 2. He's only giving it to number 2. I said he's going to give it to number 3. So isn't that coming to conclusion? He says, look, He's come to include, when he says kol, he means this case. He means the second case at the bottom of Mem Ches Menalf that we learned today. The Rava said, don't think that it doesn't work with the son. If the son told Yankel, I'm giving it to you, I'm only giving it to you, my father can come and eat it. But only if my father can come and eat it. Not only that case, even if he just says, I'm giving it to you so that my father can come, and he's only giving it to him so his father can come and eat. But he's not really giving it to him at all. Don't forget, in all the other cases when the guy's on the road, it's also pretty obvious that, that he's giving it to him so that to get around the netter. But he got around the netter. Either he was mafkir, he gave it to a third person. Rav Meir never meant to give it to Yankel at all. He really meant for his father to eat the meal. It's from him. It was just a ruse. He never really meant to give it to him in title at all. So therefore, the cases are similar. The cases are similar, but still we say that in the case of Rav Nachman holds that it still works. The Ram brings down as machlokes. The Ram Paskin is not like Rav Nachman. Brings down from the Rambam though. The Ram Paskin is like Rav Nachman. That Kani al Manas Laknos does work. You acquire number two and ask to give it to your son later on. How does it work? Retroactive works retroactive. Like the Ran explains, it could work from right now, but it does work there because that's a legitimate way of doing things. Just like Kinyan Sudar, Kinyan Chalipin. Give me the handkerchief. You give me the handkerchief. I give you my chametz. I'm going to give you back the handkerchief. So I'm going to give it back to you. That works. But for that period of time, it was mine. For the Kinyan, it works here too. So it works for that purpose. It works retroactively for that purpose that you can give it to the other guy. But over here, in the case of the wedding, it's much more obvious. It's much more obvious because he's only preparing the food for his father. He's not making a food for Yankel, for anybody else. So it's too obvious. Or the other answer he said is that it goes like a blazer. That sheet is a different sheet. It goes like a blazer. It was more machmir when it comes to the darim. But maybe the cases are pretty similar. But that goes like a blazer. And our case here is not like a blazer. All right, we'll pick him up from the Mishnah tomorrow. Have a good day.
The wedding as well.
Oh, he was invited, but he gave him the whole Suda. Nobody gives him the whole Suda. He gave him the whole Suda. That was, obviously he gave it to him. Why did he give it to him? He was invited anyway. He gave it to him anyway to give so his father could eat there.